Okay, so our two objectives for today, number one is to get the prompt for tomorrow. And I'll put up the same video that I did for the Unit 1, just in case anybody needs to go back and review anything in terms of expectations. But for the most part, everybody did a really good job last time. So again, you're doing choice number 2 here. I do not expect an essay. It's just one good paragraph. But we're combining with the vocabulary, also making sure that you're practicing your research skills because you're getting ready to move into a research project as we go into our Civil War unit. So it asks, most Americans consider electricity as the greatest invention of all time, with the automobile and the printing press ranking well behind. Do you agree? Now remember, as it asks, do you agree, you're not writing, I think, I feel, I believe. It's going to clearly state the position. Now, I've also put on here, if you don't want to write about one of these three, if you feel like there is something else, some other maybe more current 21st century invention that you would like to talk about, you can. Okay, you don't have to talk about these three unless you want to, but you have that choice to put something else. I really want you to focus on the studies and the reading. So again, you're going to be going to the databases to find research. And pretty much everybody did a really good job with that last time. And again, I'll put up the video to remind you how to get to the databases. Our grammar focus this time are those compound sentences with the fanboys. And there is a quiz on No Red Ink that everybody has to take. 3 of you have taken it so far and done really well. Yay, 100s for all 3, which is awesome. But that's going to be your grammar focus. If you need to, you can go back into No Red Ink and find the lesson on that so that it provides you with examples. Let me show you real quick how you do that. I'm going to have to, hey Cora, I'm going to unshare my screen and share a different screen with you. So that you can see that. Hey Derek. Okay, if you're in already and see yours looks completely, hang on, I'm going to click, they've just added this, view as a student. If you go to page, if you go to learn and you type in fanboys, you will see punctuation with conjunctions. If you click on lesson in any practice that you've already done, you see these little notes here, and it gives you examples. So if you need to look at that as you're typing your sentences, that is okay. Just to make sure you mark the right thing. Okay, I'm going to go back to this. I have the rubric attached on the assignment. And again, the video that I had from last time that I'll put up again goes through the rubric. There are 5 different sections. You get 2 points per section, then I just double it. It'll open up tomorrow morning at 8. It'll close Saturday at noon. Are there any questions about the vocabulary Unit 2 test? Maddie's saying no here. How about the rest of you at home?
It's gonna be like a paragraph, the same thing as last time, right?
Yes, sir. One paragraph.
How many compound sentences are you expecting?
2.
Compound sentences?
With the fanboys.
Oh, okay.
Yep. Derek, there's a quiz on No Red Ink ready for you to take. See, that can kind of be your review.
All right.
Yep. I figure 2 in a paragraph that's like 3/4 of a page type. That's not too many. Good questions. What else? Maddie's ready for story time. She's looking at the bricks on the wall. Oh. It's just me and Maddie in the classroom today. We're getting kind of tired of staring at each other here. All right, if there are no more questions, I'm going to close this. And you guys do not need to have your now. I will share it here on the screen. But part of what Maddie and I did before you guys came on is we read through this excerpt from Emerson's Self-Reliance. And part of what you're looking at in this unit are those 5 kind of characteristics of transcendental thought, with the confidence, the self-reliance, nonconformity, free thought, and I always forget the 5th one. What's the 5th one? And I don't have the handout out. Who remembers the 5th one? What? I couldn't hear what you said. I'm sorry.
I'm thinking of the analysis.
Yeah. You have nonconformity, self-reliance.
Free thought.
Free thought. I just need
Confidence.
confidence. What's the 5th one?
Importance of nature.
Yes. How can I forget that one? I just went outside and read that. And the importance of nature. So, you see a lot of highlighting that I've done as Maddie and I were going through this. I mean, just almost every line is like you can stop and think about it all by itself. But what I really want to focus on today, and the part that goes with my story about how I met my husband, is the trust thyself. Now, do you guys want the condensed version? It's called Reader Digest Condensed Version. Or do you want the full version that may take us into Monday? I don't care which. It's a really good story. You get to hear about Miss Vickers' 18-year-old self.
I like stories, so I'm saying full.
Okay? Yeah, I can do the long version? Okay. Because it's fun. And if we need to take a break, we can. And people who aren't able to come are just going to miss out. But trust thyself. Every heart vibrates to that iron string. So I was that awkward teenager who definitely did not trust herself. And I didn't date. It was mid-80s. You were like, if you weren't paired off by the time you were 15 or 16, people thought that there might be something wrong with you. And I was one of those people. In fact, my own father, so I have a sister who's a year and a half younger than I am. And she was paired off by the time she was 15, engaged by the time she was 18. And that'll be another story for a different time. I call her my soap opera sister. But I did not have any prospects. And my dad was very concerned about that. In fact, at one point, he even told me that I needed to stop reading so much and act dumb, or I was never going to find a husband. And I don't know why, little girls, we don't stand up to our daddies too much. We kind of hold them up on a pedestal, but I was kind of beyond that at this point. And I just looked at my dad and said, if whoever I end up with has a problem with me being, quote, smart, then I don't need to be with that person. Like, why would I do that? And why would you advocate that I do that? Because at the very same time, he was also very proud of the fact that I was in all of these AIG courses. My mother did not graduate from high school. She dropped out at 15 after her mother died. She was the oldest child out of 5. And so she stayed home to take care of her younger brothers and sisters and just never went back. She was very smart. You would have never, ever known. She wrote articles and stories for newspapers and magazines. She was very well read. We had stuff in the house to read all the time. She took us to the public library. She read to us all that. You just would not have known. So out of one side of my dad's mouth, he was saying, we don't want you to get married until you go to college, because I was a first generation kid. Nobody in my family had been to college, and now it's just me. And in terms of first cousins, I have 2 other cousins who have gone to college. So that was very important to him. But at the same time, he was very concerned that I didn't have a male in my life who was going to take care of me. I don't understand. I guess it's just his generation of, being born in the 1940s and growing up in the 50s and 60s. I don't know. But when it came to trusting myself, I trusted myself in terms of my academics. I had a lot of confidence there. But I did not trust myself when it came to relationships. My first boyfriend, the only boyfriend I had before I met my husband, I went out with this guy my senior year for all of 3 months, people. 3 months. I kind of really don't even count it as a for real relationship. He was a year younger than I was, so he was a junior. And he was a very nice young man, but there was a point when he was driving me home from a date we had, and I look on the floorboard of his car, and there are all these letters, like envelopes and letters out. He had moved to North Carolina from Michigan, so he was newer to our area. And as I look closer at these envelopes, there are little hearts on the envelopes, and the hugs and kisses, the XOXOXO, stuff like that. I wasn't like picking up the letters and reading them, but these things were at my feet. Like, I couldn't help but notice them. And so when we got to the house, I said, who are these letters from? What is this? And he said, oh, that's just a friend from Michigan. There's nothing going on. And I'm like, I'm not stupid. Like, there are hearts all over these envelopes and all this other stuff. He was like, oh, no, there's not anything going on. Well, and that was like in February. In March, it was my birthday, and there was a pep rally. And, pep rallies in the mid-'80s were a huge deal, especially at East Meck High School. They were huge. I mean, people really got into the pep rallies. So it was an exciting day. Well, right before the pep rally, he pulls me aside and he says, you know what, you were right. Um, I am keeping up a relationship with this girl up in Michigan. And in fact, I'm going to go up there and go to prom with her. I was so angry. He did this on my birthday. On the way to the pep rally, even his guy friends told him that was just wrong. Like, what, you could have waited until the next day. Why did you do it right then? And in fact, they didn't sit with him at the pep rally because they thought it was so wrong. And and for like 17-year-old guys to realize that's wrong, it was pretty bad. So I was angry, so angry. And I am pretty quiet and I am pretty shy, but when you cross me, it is not pretty. And so a few days later, I cornered him in the hallway and told him if he thought that this girl was up in Michigan waiting for him, he had another thing coming, that he was probably, and I'm just like, I don't know the girl, I don't know the situation, I'm just talking. And I looked at him and said, my guess is she has a boyfriend and she's just not telling you. And of course, it's Michigan, and I think the prom was in April. So I'm sitting there, looking at him saying, and it's you going to be freezing cold or rainy or snowy or something, like you're not even going to have a good time. And I hope you don't. So it's a month later. So he comes back and I don't really have a whole lot of communication with him. We worked together at Food Lion. So we had to see each other there. But by that point, I was kind of controlling my schedule, so I would just kind of try as much as I could to make sure I didn't work at the same time. But he comes back from the prom and he finds me in the hallway and he said, how did you know? And I'm like, I had already forgotten. I didn't even know what he was talking about. And he said, I ended up spending the weekend at her parents' house while she went to the prom with her boyfriend. And it was so hard for me not to laugh in his face. But he said that actually happened. And part of me was sad, but the other half of me was just cracking up. Um, and then, anyway, and the weather wasn't good, and it was a pretty miserable weekend for him. But I had been so angry that I was just spouting out stuff out of anger. I didn't know that any of that would actually come true. So our prom is coming up, and there's one young man I wanted to go to the prom with, not as boyfriend, girlfriend. I was kind of interested. I thought it would be fun, but he ended up asking an exchange student. So I did not get to go with him, which that all worked out well too. But this other guy, Russ, comes back to me and says, do you want to go to prom? Well, I'm still stupid 18-year-old, right? So I say yes. And in my stupid 18-year-old brain, I'm like, oh, maybe we can get back together, because you live in this fantasy world at 18, that all these things are just going to come together. And this is why I advocate going to prom in big groups of friends and just have a fun time and be silly. Because when you go as a couple, you have all of these expectations, and sometimes they don't pan out. And then you're kind of disappointed. Whereas if you go with a group of friends, you can just be silly and have a good time and enjoy yourself. So I end up going with him and a group of his friends. We all go to dinner at a place that doesn't even exist in Charlotte anymore. Very fancy restaurant. A lot of it was French. I was the only one at the table who knew French. So I ended up ordering for everybody because they didn't know what it was or how to pronounce it. So we went through all of that. We got to the prom. It was okay. Um, I ended up not even spending a whole lot of time with the person I went to the prom with. And then we left, and we went to go hang out at one of his friends' houses. And finally, I was just so miserable. I looked at him and said, "Will you please just take me home?" Like, this was not going as I intended. But so the trust thyself, I still wasn't there in terms of relationships. Um, so I didn't worry about it anymore. I graduated from high school. I was not in any way, shape, or form looking for anybody to date. My sister, meanwhile, got engaged as a senior in high school. I'm still not looking for anybody. I was working 40 plus hours a week at Food Lion to try to save money for college. So I didn't go to college right after high school because there was no money for me to do that. And all of a sudden, some of my cashier friends start coming up to me and saying, have you seen the new stalker? And I'm not saying stalker, Stocker, stalker. He's really cute, he's really nice. And I'm like, nah, I haven't seen him. And then there was one particular night I was closing the store. And by this point, I was working in the office and I was taking care of all the money and the scheduling and all that kind of stuff. So I'm at a cash register because we didn't have computers then. And everything ran through the last cash register, like all the money from all the other registers. And you had to stand there and hold this tape because it was so long, it would roll up on each other. Anyway, it would get stuck. So I'm standing there holding the tape, waiting for it to run, and I can see somebody clocking in at our time clock. You still punched in those days with like a little card. And I didn't recognize the person, but all I could see was the back side of him. And I thought, oh, okay, that looks nice. And then he turned around and his smile literally lit up the whole area. I don't know who he was smiling at. He was smiling at somebody that he must have recognized. But in that moment, and I have never trusted myself, I've never felt this confident about anything, I knew I was going to go out with him. And that is unlike any other feeling I've ever had, ever. Now, I'm not talking about marriage. I'm just saying I knew I was going to go out with him. There was this voice that told me that. And it was very calm. And I was like, okay. So the only other relationship I had was that 3 months with that boy that I don't even count. But I see him. I still have not met him formally. I have not talked to him. And I still don't for several weeks. In the meantime, I have a friend. She's still my best friend. The only friend I have from school, actually. And she decides it'll be fun to double date and set me up on a blind date. Yeah, this didn't go so well. So she is dating some young man that she's met. She was working at Eastland Mall at the time at a record store. It was called the Record Bar. And she met this guy. And so she said, well, he has a friend. And I'm thinking, she's my friend. She wouldn't set me up with somebody that wasn't okay, right? So I agree to this double date. And we agree that we're going to go to a place called the Jazz Cellar. It was in downtown Charlotte. I love jazz music. So I was really excited. And I went, and I lived in Matthews, so I went and picked her up in Charlotte, and then we drove to her boyfriend's apartment, and this was his roommate that I was going out with. So the first indication for me, because I'm very traditional, that things were not going to go well is when the two guys said, well, you're going to drive us there, right? Because we don't have a car. That was kind of a signal to me because my 18-year-old self was like, you're the guys, you should be taking care of. Anyway, in the end, I was glad I was the one who was driving. But, I said, sure, not a problem. So we get down to the jazz cellar. It was, you could sit and eat dinner, and they had live jazz music. So we're sitting down at the table, and this guy that I'm supposed to be on this date with is wanting to touch me. And not inappropriately, but I don't know him. And he's wanting to like touch my hand or touch my shoulder or, kind of stroke my back. And guys, I am not a touchy-feely, like, no, I have a bubble and you don't come in near it. And I kept moving myself, moving him, and he just was not getting the message. So finally, I looked at my friend and said, come to the bathroom with me. So guys, when we say girls go to the bathroom, it's so we can talk about you guys. I'm just letting you know. We don't really need each other's support to go to the restroom. But we get into the restroom, and I said, the way the bathroom is set up, we could leave right now and they would never even see us leave. I mean, I was that uncomfortable, did not want to go through with this at all. And she was like, I'm not usually that person who's that mean. And so she was shocked. And I said, no, really, we could just leave. And she said, how would they get back? You're the one who drove. They lived on Central Avenue, and we were on 7th Street. I don't know if you guys know anything about Charlotte, but anyway, I said there are buses that will take them back because those are two major thoroughfares. There are buses that will take them back home if they need to. She convinced me that that was not the nice thing to do. I'm going to guess they were maybe like 20 or 21, and me and my friend were 18. So we go back out, and I physically move my seat so I am not beside him because I was just too uncomfortable with that. And the music was good, and I don't remember much about the food. But I enjoyed the music part of it. And then we got up and left and took them back to the apartment. And I wanted to be done with it. They invited us back upstairs to the apartment. Again, I was not comfortable with that. But Suzanne, my friend, she was dating this boy, this whatever. And I'm like, you didn't know he didn't own a car, you didn't know. So she must not have been dating him for very long. And they probably only saw each other at the mall. But anyway, so I go on upstairs with Suzanne, and we're in their apartment. And then when things got really, really bad, the one guy that I'm supposed to be double dating with looks at me and says, so I've got some pot back in the bedroom. You want to come back with me? Guys, I don't drink. I don't do drugs. I never had. And I don't say that as a part of trying to say I'm better than anybody else. There's a story behind that too. But I watched my father as he was passed out from alcohol at the age of 5 on Christmas Eve. And I didn't understand it. I thought he was dead. The police were at our house because I guess at some point he and my mom got into a major argument. There was never alcohol in our house, So I didn't even know what it was. But I told myself at 5, whatever caused my dad to look like that, I would never, ever do. And of course, as I got older, I realized what had happened. I don't like being out of control of my own body. When I've had surgery, I can take painkillers for about 48 hours and then I'm done. I'm like, I'll just deal with the pain because I don't like not knowing what I might say or what I might do. I am that control freak. So at that point, when that young man said, let's go back in the bedroom, I looked at my friend and I said, really and truly, I'm done. You can stay here, but I'm leaving. I mean, the whole scene was just ludicrous. I was so freaked out, I was laughing hysterically. Like I could hardly stand up. We were going down, they had outside steps to go down, back into the parking lot. I was laughing so hard I had to hang on to the steps. And this crazy young man, I don't know what he was thinking. He's yelling down the steps, hey, I had fun. Can we do this again? Can I get your phone number? And I'm like, oh, you're not giving it. No, I will not see you again. I'm looking at my friend going, and you will not give him my phone number. But again, that's part of that trust thyself. I promise this whole story goes together. But I had that bad experience. I had the experience with the quote boyfriend for the 3 months. And then all of a sudden, here I am looking at a stranger where I work. and my brain is saying, you're going to go out with him. So it's several weeks before I actually get to meet Kevin in person. And I got very sneaky about it. He would stalk with a friend of mine from high school. His name was Bruce. And Bruce pretty much talked to anybody. Very smart guy. We took computer classes together, of all things, and he actually understood what he was doing. I never did. But because I was responsible for the payroll and the scheduling, I would have to go to him and say, what time do you think you'll be done? Because I would have to project his hours so I could finish up payroll. Well, he and Kevin would be stocking on the same aisle, and I figured out pretty quickly that Kevin will talk to a wall if that's all he has to talk to. Like, he is one of those people that will talk to anybody, anytime, never met a stranger kind of thing. So once I figured that out, I would find excuses to go on their aisle to talk to them. And then it came to a point where I would ask them what time they thought they were going to get done in the guise of I needed to work on payroll, but it was really so I could figure out if I needed to speed up or slow down my own work so I could leave at the same time. Guys, I was so sneaky. And this is not like me at all. But I was determined I was going to have an opportunity to talk to him. So what started happening is we would, the 3 of us would clock out at the same time. Our manager would lock up, and then the 3 of us would stand out in the parking lot. And this was probably about October because the pumpkins were out for people to buy. So it's fall and it's getting kind of cool outside, but we would stand out for like 30, 45 minutes in the parking lot just talking, the 3 of us. Well, then it got to a point where Bruce was getting a little uncomfortable. I think he felt like he was the third wheel. So he would start excusing himself and going on ahead and leaving, which would leave me and Kevin hanging out a little bit longer. So this went on for several weeks. And then one night they needed Kevin to come in if he could. He wasn't on the schedule, but somebody had called in sick or something, and they asked, they were wondering if he were available. And I, of course, volunteered to call his house to find out because, of course, the manager was too busy and needed to go do other things. But I had a minute. I could do that. So I called the phone number, and he had actually moved back home with his parents, and he was going to UNCC and living at home. He had been at the eastern part of the state, but decided to come up here and finish up his schooling at UNCC. So I call, and his mother answers, and I asked to speak with Kevin, and she says, "Oh, is this Carol Lynn?" Who in the heck is Carol Lynn? Is all I'm thinking. Is this a girlfriend? Why is he out there talking to me for an hour after work? Who is Carol Lynn? That's all, and my heart sank. Guys, we're not even dating yet, and I already feel this way. So I said, "No, this isn't Carol Lynn. My name is Stacy. I work at Food Lion." And, the manager was just wondering if he could come in for a little bit tonight because someone's called in sick. And then she proceeds to tell me, "No, he's at school." Guys, this was like, I don't know, 8:30 or 9 o'clock at night. And she said he had some kind of science lab or something. I don't know. All I'm thinking in my head is, there's no class this late at night. Who's Carol Lynn and what is he doing? Like, he's lying to his parents. He's got to be. And he's out there at UNCC with Carol Lynn. Still not dating him, but I'm still like getting riled up about this. So anyway, I hang up. And we continue this game of talking until all hours of the night. And then one night we're out until it was probably midnight or so after work. Just the two of us. We're outside. We are not in a vehicle. And his parents drive up in their pajamas. He's the youngest of four boys. They're looking for their baby boy. Like, why is he not at home? Is he okay? And all I'm sitting there thinking is, oh my goodness, they're wondering, who is this girl that he's standing out there with? Like, what respectable young lady is out in the middle of the night in the parking lot with our son? Like, she can't be any good. But on that night, a pizza delivery car had passed by, and he yelled out his address. It said, "Hey, go to blah, 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 blah." Well, guys, I put that little nugget in my brain of his address. And that time we didn't have GPS and cell phones and all that. I went and bought a map of Matthews, and I looked it up. See, and this is why you guys need to be here, because I love watching students' faces when I say this. Do you guys even can you put your cameras on for a second and show me your faces, like when you hear that?
Nah, I'm smiling right now.
I literally bought a map of Matthews.
That's a whole Netflix movie right there.
I know. And I found the street. And so not only did I do that, I drove to it over that weekend, and I figured out where the house was, and drove around. So now I know where he lives. I know that there's some young lady named Carol Lynn, but of course I'm too shy to ask him who that is. I don't know if they're dating. I don't know. All I know is I had that voice that said, "You're going to date him." So we continue this charade. And then finally, he starts expressing a little more interest. And there's one night we're at work, and by then he's working in produce. He worked in every department. He worked wherever they needed him. But he's working in produce, and I'm up in the office, and he comes up to me, and this is getting close to Thanksgiving now. So we've passed through October, we're into November. It's like the week before Thanksgiving. And he walks up to me at some point and he says, "So do you like horses?" I mean, just random. "Sure, I like horses." And he walks away. And he comes back a little later and he says, "Would you like to go horseback riding sometime?" Guys, I had never been on a horse in my life. I had seen one once in real life, but never ridden one. But I look at him with all the confidence in the world and said, "Yeah, sure, I'd love to go horseback riding." Never been on a horse. He walks away. He comes back and he says, "So are you going to be in town at Thanksgiving?" And I said, "Yeah, we don't, our family is close by. We don't go anywhere at Thanksgiving." And then he walks away. And then he comes back and asks if I want to go horseback riding the day before Thanksgiving. And I said, "Yeah, sure, that sounds good." And he walks away. And he comes back and he asks me, "Do you have a phone?" And I just kind of give him the crazy look. "Yeah, we have a phone." And he said he was from the eastern part of the state. There's a lot of poverty there, and he really did have a lot of friends who didn't have phones in their homes. And he said he didn't want to embarrass me if I didn't have a phone. But I said, "Yeah, I have a phone." He walked away again. Like, instead of just asking for the phone number, he walks away. This all took place over like 30 or 40 minutes.
You know what he was doing? He was going to a friend. He was like, "Yeah, she got the phone," and I'm tell you seen the movies.
Well, this is the deal. There was nobody. He was the only one in produce. There was nobody for him to talk to. So I found it quite amusing. So then he finally comes back and he asked for my phone number and asked if it would be okay to call. And I said yes, but now my dad got up at like 2 or 3 in the morning to go to work. So I said, if you do call, don't call after 9 o'clock at night. Like, just don't do that. Because remember, no cell phones. You just have one family phone, and it rings in his bedroom. I'm like, that's not that's not good. The man only sleeps for like 5 or 6 hours anyway. So we end up going horseback riding the day before Thanksgiving. And we're on one horse. He had a horse. Her name was Bucket. And she was a very sweet little horse, except when I was on her by myself. And then she knew, and she would do things like buck or suddenly run or whatever and freak me out. But I never told Kevin that I'd not been on a horse before. So we're riding bareback and we're riding together. And I don't really understand why, because I'm the short one. My husband's 6'4", people. And I was a tiny little thing. I weighed 98 pounds. I was so small. I should have been the one in front and he should have been behind me. But for whatever reason, he was in front and I was sitting behind him, like kind of holding on to his waist. And we're out in the middle of the woods where Windsor Square is. Do you know where that is in Matthews? There's like I don't know, there are a bunch of stores, the J.C. Penney, and I don't know. Anyway, Windsor Square in Matthews, at the time, that was all woods, except for this stable where the horse was. So there were horse trails all back through there. So we're riding through the woods. It's the day before Thanksgiving. It's November. Leaves are down. But all of a sudden on the trail, there was a tree limb. Well, he's 6'4". All I'm looking at is his back. That's all I can see. All of a sudden, he ducks. He didn't tell me why. And I am watching a tree limb coming at me. So I had a decision to make, either get hit by the tree limb because I couldn't duck fast enough, or kind of go over backwards and just kind of gently fall off the back of the horse, which is the choice I went with instead of getting hit by the tree limb. I hope you guys are laughing at home and people are asking what in the heck is going on. Um, so I fall off the horse. He doesn't even notice. He kept going. He was into whatever, and he still does the same thing today. He was so into whatever he was talking about, he wasn't paying attention to anything else. And I guess he got to an end in whatever he was talking about or asked me a question and realized I wasn't there. And he's like, where are you? And he's turning around looking. I'm like, I'm back here. What? Well, I was until the tree limb was coming at me. No, he didn't notice. He was so into what he was talking about. But he comes back and gets me. I get back home. It was a lovely day. We had a fun time. But there was still Carolyn. I had not asked about Carolyn. And that is where I'm going to end my story. And I'm going to write it down so that Monday, when you come back, I know to start at the Thanksgiving Day, because there's more to the story. Guys, we're not even still officially dating yet. And all of this has already happened. We haven't even started officially dating. So my task for you is to go through Self-Reliance on pages 185 and 186. Find some quotes that you could tell a story with. I'm not asking you what do you think it means. You're all smart. I know you know what things mean. But I want you to connect a story, one that you can share on the discussion board. Okay, so I've made a discussion assignment. I'm not even asking you to respond to each other. I love hearing people's stories because you all have one. So when I say tell a story, like with the trust thyself, I was just telling you my story. Now, granted, it's long. I don't expect anything that long. But find a quote and tell me a story of an experience you've had that goes with the ideas from that quote. That's part of your task with this self-reliance. But come Monday when we meet, and I may just say let's meet at like 2:15, I will finish my story and then I have more to share before we move on to Henry David Thoreau.
So just to clarify, we find a quote that has to do with self-reliance and then we tell a personal story about it?
Yes, so on pages 185 and 186 of your textbook is an essay from Ralph Waldo Emerson called Self-Reliance. And I want you to choose one of the quotes from that essay to tell a story of. There are a ton of really good quotes. I mean,
where is the discussion thing?
did I not put it up? I thought I did.
It says complete discussion activity, but there's no link to it.
Good afternoon.
Can you refresh your
Looking at your
screen
attention for the afternoon announcement.
and see if it
Bus
pops
riders,
up?
we have 3 bus changes. Listen closely. Bus 146, you will ride bus 356. That's 146, you will ride 356. 412, you will ride 374. Again, that's 412, you will ride 374.
Yeah, there should be a link there.
And finally, bus 278, you will ride bus 17.
Sometimes if you don't refresh your screen throughout the
There will be
day.
no cross-country practice this afternoon. Again, cross-country is canceled for this afternoon, as well as volleyball. There will be no volleyball.